The sound of shattering glass echoed through the penthouse office as Victoria Winters, CEO of Horizon Enterprises, stared at the email that would change everything. After 15 years of building her empire, the board was plotting to force her out. But that wasn't what made her heart race tonight. No, it was the decision she'd finally made about James, the single father who'd awakened feelings she'd buried beneath spreadsheets and business plans for far too long. I've waited long enough, she whispered to herself, deleting the board's email. Tonight she would tell him how she felt, regardless of the professional storm brewing. Little did she know James was facing an ultimatum of his own that would test everything they might become. Victoria's fingers trembled as she applied her signature red lipstick. At 42, her alabaster skin remained flawless, framed by long platinum blonde hair that cascaded past her shoulders. The mirror reflected back a woman who had conquered the business world but had kept her heart locked away until James and his daughter Emma had accidentally crashed into her life 6 months ago. She smoothed down her black dress, wondering if she was making the biggest mistake of her career or finally making the right choice for her life. If you're enjoying this emotional journey already, please hit that like button and let me know in the comments if you've ever had to choose between your heart and your career. James Parker adjusted his tie for the third time, his fair skin flushed with anxiety. At 38, his athletic build still turned heads, but tonight his mind was elsewhere. His daughter Emma's private school had delivered an ultimatum: pay the overdue tuition by the end of the month or find another school. The photography studio he built after his wife's death was struggling, and the thought of disappointing Emma again crushed him. He ran his fingers through his dark hair, practicing the smile that had charmed clients and hidden his struggles for years. The dinner invitation from Victoria had come unexpectedly. She was everything he wasn't: powerful, wealthy, untouchable, yet something had sparked between them during those late nights when she'd helped him restructure his business plan, something neither had acknowledged until now. The restaurant's soft lighting cast a golden glow across Victoria's face as she watched James approach her table. Her heart stuttered as he flashed that disarming smile that had first caught her attention when he'd been hired to photograph Horizon's annual report. "You look incredible," he said, his eyes taking in her elegance. "And you clean up rather nicely yourself, for a man who spends his days crawling around getting the perfect shot of fidgety children," she replied with the playful banter that had become their language. "Those fidgety children pay the bills." He laughed, though the shadow that crossed his face didn't escape her notice. "Something's wrong," Victoria stated rather than asked, her business instincts kicking in. James hesitated, then sighed. "Emma's school, the tuition increased this year. I'm behind. They've given me until the end of the month." Victoria's hand twitched toward his but stopped short. No. He cut her off gently. "That's not why I'm telling you. I'll figure it out. I always do." The waiter arrived with champagne Victoria had pre-ordered, interrupting the tension between them. As the bubbles rose in their glasses, so did the unspoken question hanging in the air. What exactly had she invited him here to say? What Victoria didn't know was that, across town, her trusted assistant was forwarding confidential company documents to the board member, orchestrating her removal, someone who believed James was nothing but a calculated distraction to weaken Victoria's legendary focus. The betrayal was already in motion, ticking like a time bomb beneath the evening's possibilities. If this unexpected twist has you on the edge of your seat, drop a comment below about who you think might be betraying Victoria, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that explore the complicated dance between love and ambition. "I didn't just invite you here to discuss business strategies," Victoria finally said, her voice softer than James had ever heard it, "though I admit that would be safer territory." James leaned forward, his charisma momentarily replaced by vulnerability. "Safe isn't always better. Sometimes the risks are worth taking, are they?" Victoria's fingers traced the stem of her glass. "I've built my life around calculated risks, James. Emotional investments weren't part of my business plan, and yet here we are," he said, his eyes never leaving hers. Victoria took a deep breath. "Emma asked me something last week when I stopped by the studio. She asked if I was going to be her new mom." James nearly choked on his champagne. "She what?" "Victoria, I'm so sorry." "Don't be," Victoria interrupted. "It made me realize something I've been avoiding. Children see things clearly sometimes. She saw that I care about you both more than I should perhaps." The confession hung between them, fragile and monumental. Before James could respond, Victoria's phone buzzed insistently. She glanced down to see multiple urgent messages from her CFO. The word emergency flashed across her screen. "Take it," James said gently. "I know who you are, Victoria. Your company needs you." She hesitated, then silenced the phone. "No, not tonight. I need to say something I've been rehearsing for weeks." She reached across the table and took his hand. "I've waited long enough. Tonight we begin our future together, if you want that too." James stared at their intertwined fingers, his mind racing between hope and fear. Victoria, there's something you should know about Emma and me. Something that might change how you see this possibility between us. The restaurant lights dimmed slightly as a pianist began playing in the corner, the melancholy notes underscoring the weight of what James was about to reveal, a secret that could either strengthen their connection or shatter it completely. This emotional moment is just the beginning of their journey. If you're invested in Victoria and James' story, hit that like button and share this video with someone who believes in second chances. What secret do you think James is hiding? 5 years ago, James began, his voice barely audible over the piano. Emma was diagnosed with a rare heart condition. The medical bills, that's the real reason I'm struggling. The photography business is doing fine, but the treatments, he swallowed hard. I didn't tell you because I didn't want your pity or your money. Victoria's grip on his hand tightened. Is she okay now? She's stable, but there will always be specialists, medications, unexpected hospital stays. It's not the carefree life I wanted to give her, and it's certainly not the baggage someone like you signed up for. Victoria's eyes flashed with unexpected fire. Someone like me? You think I'm afraid of challenges? James, I built a technology empire from the ground up in an industry that wanted me to fail. I've faced board rebellions and hostile takeovers. I've weathered economic crashes that destroyed my competitors. This is different, he insisted. Yes, she agreed, surprising him. This is more important. Emma is more important. You are more important. The conviction in her voice silenced his protests. For the first time, James saw beyond Victoria's polished exterior to the woman who had fought for everything she had and was now fighting for them. I don't need a perfect life, James. I need a real one. With real love, real challenges, real purpose beyond quarterly reports and shareholder meetings. As she spoke, Victoria's phone lit up, again, this time with a text that caught her eye. Board emergency meeting called for tomorrow morning. Vote of no confidence. Evidence of mismanagement attached. She quickly turned the phone face down, but not before James caught the flash of panic in her eyes. Victoria, what's wrong? She forced a smile. Nothing, that can't wait until tomorrow. Tonight is about us. But James knew her well enough now to recognize when she was strategizing behind her calm facade. Tell me, he insisted gently. Victoria hesitated, then sighed. It seems I may be fighting for my company sooner than I expected. Someone's making a move against me. Then we should end this evening now. You need to prepare. No, she cut him off firmly. That's exactly what I've always done. Sacrifice the personal for the professional. Not tonight. She straightened her shoulders, the CEO instinctively emerging. Besides, I think better when I'm not alone in my office, overthinking every scenario. James smiled, recognizing her strength, even in vulnerability. Then, let's think together. After dinner, the waiter arrived with their entree, momentarily pausing their conversation. As they ate, Victoria found herself sharing details about the board tensions she'd never discussed with anyone. James listened intently, occasionally offering perspectives that surprised her with their insight. You know, she said, studying him over her wine glass, you understand business strategy better than half my executive team. Former marketing director before I followed my passion for photography, he reminded her with a wink. Not all of us were born to be CEOs, and not all CEOs were born to be only that, she replied softly. The evening deepened around them as they finished dinner, their conversation flowing between strategies for Victoria's board meeting and James's upcoming gallery showing. For the first time in years, Victoria felt the weight of leadership lifting from her shoulders, replaced by something lighter, yet somehow more substantial. As they stepped outside the restaurant, the night air cool against their skin, James turned to her. I should get home, to Emma, the sitter, understand, Victoria said, though disappointment flickered across her face. But he continued, taking her hand. I'd like you to come to dinner tomorrow at our home. Emma's been asking when you'd visit again. The invitation, so simple, so profound in what it offered, made Victoria's breath catch. I'd love that, assuming I still have a job after tomorrow's meeting. You will, James said with conviction. And if not, Emma and I will still be there. The promise in those words wrapped around Victoria's heart. Standing on the sidewalk, the city lights illuminating his face, James leaned forward and kissed her. Not the hesitant kiss of uncertainty, but the confident kiss of a man who knew exactly what he wanted. When they parted, Victoria whispered, I've made my decision, James. Whatever happens tomorrow with the board, I'm choosing us. I've built enough empires. It's time to build something that matters more. If this moment between Victoria and James touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more stories about love that arrives when you least expect it but need it most. The board meeting the next morning was exactly the ambush Victoria had anticipated. Evidence of supposed mismanagement, fabricated, she knew immediately, was presented by Richard Harmon, her CFO of 7 years, and she now realized the architect of her planned downfall. The numbers don't lie, Victoria, Richard said smoothly as the other board members reviewed the documents. Your focus has been elsewhere recently. Perhaps it's time for leadership that prioritizes Horizon's future. Victoria remained silent, studying the faces around the table. Some avoided her eyes. They'd already been convinced. Others looked confused, waiting for her defense. She thought of James, of Emma, of the life that waited beyond these walls if she walked away. Then she thought of the 15 years she'd poured into building this company, the thousands of employees who depended on her leadership, the innovations they were developing that could genuinely improve lives. Walking away wasn't the answer. The numbers don't lie, Richard, she finally said, her voice steady. But people do. She opened her laptop and turned it toward the board. These are the actual quarterly projections verified by our external auditors yesterday. And this, she pulled a flash drive from her purse, is evidence of systematic data manipulation originating from your department over the past 3 months. The boardroom erupted in confused murmurs as Richard's face drained of color. I've suspected for some time that someone was laying groundwork to question my leadership, Victoria continued calmly. What I didn't know was why. Care to explain the communications between you and Meridian Tech about your future position there once they acquired our weakened company at a discount? By the time the meeting concluded 3 hours later, Richard had been escorted from the building. The vote of no confidence had transformed into a unanimous vote of support, and Victoria had secured approval for the restructuring plan she'd been developing for months. As she packed her briefcase to leave, her assistant knocked tentatively on the door. Ms. Winters, there's someone here to see you. Victoria looked up to find James standing in the doorway. Emma, beside him, both holding small bouquets of flowers. We thought you might need these today, Emma said, stepping forward to present her bouquet. At 11, she had her father's warm eyes and quick smile, though Victoria could see the slight pallor that hinted at her condition. The meeting went well, I take it? James asked, noting Victoria's composed demeanor. Better than expected, Victoria admitted, though I'm ready to leave it behind for the day. She knelt to Emma's level. Thank you for the flowers. They're exactly what I needed. Emma beamed. Dad said you might be sad or happy today, but either way flowers help. Your dad is very wise, Victoria said, glancing up at James with a smile. Sometimes he agreed with a laugh, wise enough to know when to show up and offer dinner a day early, if you're free. Victoria looked around her office, the space that had defined her for so long, and felt something shift inside her. I am definitely free, she said, taking Emma's hand, led the way. As they walked through the executive floor, employees stared in surprise at the formidable Victoria Winters holding hands with a young girl, followed by a man carrying flowers. Victoria found she didn't mind the stares. Let them see that their CEO was human after all. Emma chattered excitedly about the dinner she'd helped plan, while James walked beside Victoria, occasionally letting his hand brush against hers. Outside the building, as they waited for the car James had parked nearby, Victoria turned to him. I almost lost everything today, she said quietly so Emma couldn't hear, and I realized something important. What's that? James asked. That everything I was afraid of losing has changed. 6 months ago, it would have been this company, this position, this power. Today, standing here with you and Emma, my definition of everything is different now. James's eyes softened as he understood what she was saying. Big changes for the untouchable CEO, not untouchable, Victoria corrected, taking his hand firmly in hers, just waiting for the right reason to be touched. As they drove toward James and Emma's home, Victoria's phone buzzed with urgent emails about the aftermath of the board meeting. For the first time in her career, she turned the phone off completely and slipped it into her purse. The business empire would still be there tomorrow. Tonight was about beginning the rest of her life, a life richer and more meaningful than she'd ever dared to imagine. In James's modest kitchen, Victoria shed her designer jacket and helped Emma make pasta sauce from scratch, laughing as tomato splattered across her silk blouse. James watched them together, his heart full at the sight of his daughter's joy and the transformation in the woman he'd come to love. Later, after Emma had gone to bed, Victoria and James sat on his small balcony, sharing a bottle of wine under the stars. I've been thinking, Victoria said, breaking their comfortable silence, about Emma's medical expenses. James tensed slightly. Victoria, let me finish, she said gently. Horizon's Health Foundation funds research into rare conditions. Emma's heart condition is on our priority list for next year's grants. I can't change the foundation's focus for personal reasons. That would be unethical, but I can make sure you have access to the specialists already in our network. As a friend of the company, she took his hand. No strings, no debt, no charity, just connections that might help. James was quiet for a long moment, and Victoria, worried she'd overstepped. Then he squeezed her hand. Thank you, he said simply, for seeing a way to help that respects both of us. Victoria leaned her head against his shoulder. I'm learning that strength isn't always about standing alone. Sometimes it's about finding the right people to stand with. Is that what we're doing? James asked softly. Standing together, Victoria turned to face him, her decision clear in her eyes. I've spent my life building things meant to last. I'd like to build something with you and Emma now. Something more important than any company or career. James cubed her face in his hands. I've waited for someone who could love both me and Emma, with all our complications. I think you might be that someone, Victoria Winters. I know I am, she replied with the same confidence that had built her empire. I've waited long enough. Tonight, we begin our future together. For real this time. As they sealed their promise with a kiss, Victoria knew that the board meeting victory palled in comparison to what she'd found here. A family forming, a love growing, a future brightening with each moment they shared. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that it's never too late to redefine what truly matters in life. Let me know in the comments which country you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this story